This is a quick walkthrough of the CFO proposal, a second assignment in the Change Leadership for Sustainability course. Let's scroll down and take a look at what's required for this assignment. So, this is the CFO proposal, assignment number 2. So this assignment is a written proposal to the CFO using a CFO proposal outline of a convincing proposal to the CFO to support your green retrofit project. So the situation is the same as before. You've done your homework, you've completed a tailored version of the workbook, the business case workbook for the green retrofit project, and that's going to be highlighted in your proposal. So although you've already done all of the numbers, usually there is a requirement to put a little bit context around the business case, perhaps more than has been allowed for in the project description and purpose alignment, etc. So what you want to do is to do this as thoroughly and completely as possible and be able to show that this is a smart thing to do in the larger context of what's going on with the company. So your deliverable will be a written executive/CFO proposal, only 10 pages, maximum 10 pages in length. Shorter is good. And that also should be written the way an executive would expect it to be written. Lots of white space, fairly large font, headings, bullets, italics. Don't use bold if you can avoid it. Italics is usually preferred by executives. You can have some figures and graphics in it, but don't overdo those either. What we're going to do is give you a little bit more information later on about what those elements might be in the proposal. But what we're going to do here is suggest that you use this kind of outline. You can change the sequence, you can change the emphasis and so on, but somewhere, somehow, the proposal to an executive for a project would normally include the elements that you see bulleted here. So we'll just walk through those. So it's pretty straightforward. There's a title page, there's an executive summary of the main points of your proposal, there's a project description and scope. This can be lifted right out of the workbook. Project context, this is a little bit more creative. So what you want to do is describe the external context of what's going on with the company and the project, perhaps even the community, industry trends, that kind of thing. So where do you get that information from? So let me just go back to a little bit of a context for this particular assignment. Back here it says you will need to be a bit creative in this exercise. Compose the proposal the way you would like it to read and show that you understand what a good winning proposal would need to contain. Think of it as a model that could be used to illustrate what a credible professional proposal to justify the extra expense of a green headquarters retrofit would look like. So in some ways you're going to be composing this as opposed to using real sources, but it's the kind of thing that you would like to be able to show in a proposal, and it outlines the kind of homework that you would need to do if you were to actually write a real proposal. So you would need to provide some type of external context. You might want to talk about its alignment to the company vision and mission and so on. So external context, internal context, other alternative projects that might accomplish some of the same things that this one is, just to show that you're not myopically fixed on this particular solution. You don't have to go into a lot of detail on that, but you also want to be careful that if some of those alternatives may be projects that you propose in the future, that you don't overdo showing why this is much better than those, because at some point you may have to come back and ask for approval of those projects. And then you get into the good stuff, the cost and the resources required. So of course the CFO is going to be especially interested in this, wanting to know a high-level breakdown of the resources needed, both money and people, and when they're going to be needed. So you need to be able to kind of extrapolate as to what those might be. And then you get into the numbers, the justification, the highlights from the worksheet, and that includes the risks of not doing the projects and some key assumptions and how they were made. and making sure that you are putting in appropriate caveats to ensure that if there are some assumptions that are particularly sensitive, that you acknowledge what those are, so that you don't come across as trying to whiz them on these things, but you do come across as someone that's really thought this thing through. The other part in this business case one is the fact that you may want to make a couple of suggestions as to how the different factors, the different criteria in the business case might be weighed. And this gets into the project appraisal worksheet. And maybe you come up with a couple of ways of showing that if you weighted the payback period, internal rate of return, net present value, the ROI part, maybe as 80% of the weight and 20% was spread across some of the other elements, that the project might have a particular weighted score of so much. Or if you changed it to 100% on that, what the weighted score would look like. Or if you changed it down to 50% on that and spread the other 50% across the other elements, what the weighted score would look like. And what you're doing here is you're planting seeds to legitimize the fact that some of these other aspects of the business case deserve attention. They matter. They matter more in the 21st century perhaps than they used to, and therefore this weighting approach may be a way to legitimize the fact that these things are informing the decision in a way that helps them make a better decision and can have an impact on the way in which they come to their final conclusion. Then you show a rough project plan. This is a timeline, and showing how over a period of time there may be various staff requirements or financial requirements. So you need to be prepared to do that kind of estimate as well. And then there's a summary and recommendations as to what you suggest they do and how they start and the next steps. And hopefully also do a close on whether the CFO is personally prepared to support this project, that it warrants his visible support, that he is comfortable showing the company and being a champion for this particular project because he sees that it is good for the company as well as good for some of the things that are environmentally and socially going to benefit from the project. If you have to, you may want to include an appendix that has some of the information from your worksheets from your other assignment as well. The scoring rubric for the proposal is pretty straightforward. It's on the criteria of how persuasive it is, how credible it is, the quality of the business case subsection, and the completeness of the proposal. And as before, the quality of the feedback that you gave to a peer, a classmate, in your peer review when you had a chance to do that, which is coming up later, as well as the score that you give them. You give them a score and they give you a score, and the score that you receive is the one that goes in here, and you submit this as part of your project as well. That is to say, you self-assess on all of these things, including that score as well, and you submit that when you submit your assignment. So this is a fairly straightforward one. This is not intended to tie you in knots. It gives you a chance to think through all of the kinds of things you would need to do, hypothesize as to what those elements might look like if you were able to actually track down all of the appropriate information, and to realize that it's more than just numbers that cause people to make decisions about these kinds of projects. The context matters, and it's another way to reinforce the fact that you have an opportunity here to show that you are a business person as well as a sustainability champion, and that you see that this is good for the business, and you would make this decision if you were the CFO, as well as someone that cares about the environmental and social aspect of the company's impacts. I think you'll enjoy doing this project.